On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. And when the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "There is no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you or to me? My hour has not yet come." And the mother of Jesus said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, standing there were 6 clay water jars used for the Jewish rites of purification, each of them holding about 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill these with water." And they filled them to the brim. And he said to them, "Now draw some out and give it to the chief steward." And they gave it to him. And when he had drank the water that had become wine, not knowing where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water out knew where it had come from, he called to him the bridegroom and said to him, "Most people serve the good wine first and keep the inferior wine until later, when the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee. And the glory of God was revealed, and the disciples believed in him. A text about a party for our first chapel back of the semester. I hope that some of you, despite the dreary gray outside, are feeling, as I do, excited about the life that is back in these halls. As I came into chapel and heard the music echoing through the halls over the last couple of days, passing students back and forth in the hallway, we are together again as a community. And that is something worth celebrating. But perhaps some of you also, like me, who have been following the news, feel as though as much party as there may be together in this community, in our larger community, the wine has already gone out. The transgender ban upheld for the military. Government workers still furloughed without pay. And the conflict, the confrontation that is developing online about the in-flesh confrontation this past weekend in Washington, D.C., between high school youth from a school in Covington and a Native American elder. Sometimes it feels as though the wine has gone out so far, perhaps it's too late to return. And that last conflict, the conversations coming up, the questions being raised about these children. What about the chaperones? What about the teachers who sent them there? What about their parents? That one, for me as a parent, really hits home. That question, who's to blame? Because we always want to blame somebody. But when we watch those videos from the many different angles that we see them, and there are many angles, I see over and over again, first, children. Children wearing signs of hate. Children harassing, ridiculing. Children feeling harassed. Where are the parents? Doesn't culture tell us, I titled the sermon for today, that mother knows best, father knows best? What are we as adults bringing to the children in our communities, in our cultures, in our country? Of course, if we read the gospel today, it seems like it's true, like the adults do know better. Mary knew even before Jesus knew that his time had come. She didn't only know how to bring the wine back to the party, to lift the spirits of friends gathered around. She knew when her son wasn't yet ready how to move him into the next step of his ministry. Mother knows best. The trouble is that if you are much of a Disney fan and so perhaps already know where I got this quote, this shift from the gender typical father knows best narrative of our society, it doesn't always quite work that way. You see, the term mother knows best was most popularized in 2010 in the Disney remake of Rapunzel, Tangled. And in it, it's part of a song. The witch, the antagonist, the main antagonist of the story, who kidnapped baby Rapunzel when she was little so that she could hold on to her and hold on to through her youth, raises Rapunzel as though she is her mother. And at the point in the movie when Rapunzel thinks that she knows what she ought to do, that she should leave the tower and begin to venture into the world on her own, Mother Gothel sets her straight. She stops her in a grand Disney musical number and tells her not to go. There'll be ruffians and thugs, poison ivy, quicksand. You don't want any of that. Mother knows best. If we read the gospel accounts, the synoptic accounts of Jesus' interactions with his mother, it might seem a little bit more like Rapunzel and Mother Gothel at times, where the child knows, is ready to enter into the world to do what God has called and made them to do and be. And the mother, the father, the parents, the adults are holding them back. In the synoptic accounts, after Jesus is a child, the first time that Mary reappears is when she and Jesus' siblings are trying to talk him out of causing such a ruckus that might get him into trouble. In fact, in Luke's gospel, when Jesus is 12 years old, he is the one who must say to Mary and Joseph, his earthly mother and father, "No, you didn't know. But I knew that I was supposed to be here in this temple, learning about my heavenly parent." Mothers, it would seem, or fathers, or chaperones, or teachers, adults don't always know best. In fact, sometimes we're just guessing. Sometimes we're blatantly wrong. But other times, we have an idea. We can hope that the adults in our world have an idea of how we are supposed to live together with one another. This, I think, is what John intuitively knows when he tells his story of Jesus and Mary, mother and son. Mary's name actually never shows up in John's gospel account. The name Mary does, but not for Mary, the mother of Jesus. She's left out of John's rather esoteric account of Jesus' birth. And John has no stories of Jesus' childhood. And so the first time that we meet the mother of Jesus in John is here at the wedding in Cana of Galilee, where she and her son are a guest. The first time that we meet Mary is not as an individual wondering and struggling with how she is going to live into the mission that God has called for her, though that's certainly a part of her story. But the first time we meet Mary in John is in relationship with Jesus. And that's why, I think, John doesn't use her name. For better or worse, John isn't concerned about Mary individually. John is concerned about the way in which Mary lives in relationship with her son. And so in John, we meet Mary at the wedding in Cana, where she knows, even when Jesus doesn't, what needs to come next. And then again, we find her at the end of John's gospel at the foot of Jesus' cross, knowing and trusting that Jesus is the Son of God, the Messiah, God in the flesh, even when everybody else, except for the beloved disciple, have gone away. In John's gospel, we meet Mary in relationship because in John's gospel, Jesus comes to us in relationship. God made flesh, God among us, a guest at a party, a son listening to his mother. It's tough to come to any sort of right answer about who's to blame in situations like the confrontation with the Covington youth in Washington, D.C. It's tough even on a smaller scale when I end up in an escalated conflict with one of my children to admit that maybe they weren't the only ones in the wrong, that maybe I missed a cue here or there that led to the behavior that I finally called them out on. It's tough to separate the children in our community who are so longing for role models, for adults who do know right from wrong, from ourselves, who hopefully most of us try, but continually fall short of always setting that example, of always knowing what God wants and where God is calling and leading us. And so it feels like in the midst of our celebrations, the wine too quickly runs out. The Christmas decorations are packed away, and we go back to living life as we have always lived it. The celebration of a new semester soon gives way to reading lists and papers to write. The excitement and enthusiasm of being back in this community, to everything that goes along with being in a close, small community. And in the midst of that, in those moments where we wonder what really is best, where we look for those who are called to lead us. In those moments outside of this community in our country where our youth and our children are calling out, begging us to do better, demanding of us that we must do better. God is with us, among us, in relationship. As a parent with children. As a chaperone or a teacher with students. When the adults don't always know best, the mothers, the fathers, even the Bible professors will get it wrong. God knows. And so God calls to us. God points to Jesus and reminds us, do whatever he tells you. God calls us to be and do the mission made flesh in Jesus, the glory of God revealed. Because John's story isn't about Mary. It isn't even about Jesus. It's about the disciples who, through the glory that Mary and Jesus showed on that day, came to believe. And so it is a call for us to believe, and in believing, to act with and for one another. Amen.